While the chair is making her way there, I will move House File 286 be recommended to be re-referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Chair Fan, before you present, I see that you have a DE2 amendment to 286.
Yep, I'd like to move the DE2.
All right, please go ahead. We'll move the DE2 and you can explain the amendment.
So when we initially introduced this bill, as you see, it's House File 286. We want to get this introduced right away. The DE2 reflects the updated numbers that we got from Civil Legal Services that reflect what it would actually take and what was in that slide with that 6-year plan.
Thank you. Any discussion to the DE2 amendment? Seeing no discussions, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The DE2 amendment is approved. Please move on.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll be real quick. This is the funding to meet what was in that slide that showed that 6-year plan of how we could actually fully fund civil legal services. Similar to conversations around public defenders, had asked the question, what would it actually take to fully fund your agent, to fully fund things so that we aren't turning away over half the people who come, who qualify and ask for help. So that's what it does. And I want to make sure we have time for our testifiers because we do have people who traveled here. So I'd like to move on to our testifiers if that's okay, Chair Frazier.
Yes, it is. Thank you. Ms. Dory Rappaport, please come down. Welcome back. Please reintroduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Dory Rappaport, Executive Director, Legal Aid Service of Northeastern Minnesota. Today, we have 3 individuals that have come to testify, and we're excited to have you, to give you the opportunity to speak with them. So I actually will just quick say their names, and then if they can come up and individually say their bit. First, Kevin Swanberg. Kevin is a LASNM Legal Aid Service of Northeastern Minnesota certified student attorney. After Kevin, Mary Kaczorek. She's a Mid-Minnesota Legal Aid supervising attorney in the housing unit, followed by Suzanne Gurdon. She is a Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services lead attorney for medical legal partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rappaport. Mr. Swanberg, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kevin Swanberg. As Ms. Rappaport said, I am a law student at Mitchell-Hamlin School of Law, and I am a student attorney at Legal Aid Service of Northeastern Minnesota. At Legal Aid, I represent clients in evictions and housing matters. I attend housing court and provide advice, counsel, and representation to people who are drowning, losing their homes, their safety is threatened, and we try to throw them a lifeline. In that role, legal aid attorneys and myself will step in and try to negotiate to give these people a chance to keep their homes, to perhaps give them a little more time to move out so they don't end up homeless with an eviction on their record. And if they're being treated unfairly, we represent them at trial and help them to save their homes. The hardest part of that work for me is something that I have to do almost every day in that job, which is tell people that I can't represent them and I can't help them because we do not have the capacity to do so. We have to choose the most critical cases, the cases that have the most merit, and tell people who also have very fair legal claims that they will have to go alone, and maybe send them some forms and some words of encouragement so that they can navigate the very complicated legal system by themselves. Something that I have seen as a student and working at LASNM is that an eviction, which is considered to be a small legal matter, can turn into a cascade of legal problems that chases people for years. Being evicted and losing your home may mean that you end up losing your job. It may mean that you end up losing your children. It may mean that you end up paying off a debt for years and cannot get a new home because you have an eviction on your record. So the work that we do in this space is absolutely critical to the people of the state. I'll finally say that as a law student, I talk a lot with other law students who tell me that they want to do this work, they want to serve their community, they want to serve their state. But the reality is that many law students leave law school with crushing student loan debt, and they can't afford to take a job at legal aid because they will not be able to pay off their loans. The money just isn't there, they can't do it, and so they have to choose to work elsewhere. But if we want good and passionate attorneys helping people in this very important work, then we need to show law students that they can afford to give people that help. So that's the last thing I'd like to say, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Swanberg, and hopefully you'll stay around if there's any questions. I too was a certified student attorney, and I had to forego an offer to work with Southern Regional Legal Services because I just couldn't make those finances work. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Mary Kozarek. I hope I didn't mispronounce that after I was just told how it was pronounced. Come on down. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Mary Kachorik, really close. That's fine. I am the managing attorney of the housing unit at Legal Aid's Minneapolis office. As the last testifier mentioned, and everyone knows, we are in the midst of an eviction crisis. In Hennepin County last month, landlords filed over 750 eviction cases. This is more than we saw in June when the moratorium ended. It's vastly more than we saw pre-pandemic in a month. Legal Aid represents renters in eviction cases. We fight housing discrimination, and we help renters who need repairs in their homes. I remember a man I helped who came to Legal Aid after he and his family had been without heat for 4 days. His home was so cold that the pipes burst, the basement flooded, and a cup of water on his coffee table would freeze solid. He called his landlord over and over for help. No one picked up. No one called him back. He went to the property manager's office. Nobody was there. He called the police. The police couldn't help him. He didn't have money to go to a hotel. He had bought his own space heaters, hired his own plumber, had to buy restaurant food because his kitchen didn't work. He had nowhere to go. Finally, his cousin told him to call the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General's office told him to call Legal Aid. The night before I spoke to this man, he told me that he and his wife, his home was so cold that he and his wife were worried their newborn baby was going to die. Excuse me. It was only after Legal Aid got involved that we used the emergency tenant remedies law that the landlord finally made these repairs, and we helped this tenant move into a new home where he and his family were safe. Last month, Legal Aid's Minneapolis office received over 6,000 calls from people needing help with all kinds of civil legal problems. Some of these cases are literally life or death cases. I urge the members of this committee to support this bill and to fully fund civil legal aid. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Suzanne Gurdon. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Gurton. I am a civil legal services attorney with Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services. I have been at Smurls for 10 years. I am currently the lead attorney for our healthcare legal partnership. Prior to that, I mostly did family law. I'm here to testify this morning on behalf of our clients and how increased funding might affect our clients and the work we do. The primary client base that I represent are victims of domestic violence. You know, a lot of people have been to court, and a lot of very educated people can kind of find their way around. But when we have a client who is in crisis, a client who is going to court to confront his or her, usually her abuser, they are overwhelmed. I have been to court with so many victims of domestic violence that had no idea what was going on when we get out of the courtroom. So I'm there to help them get their relief, but I'm also there to help them prepare for trial, because the order for protection is a trial where a victim of domestic violence is confronting her abuser and also being cross-examined by him. To go into that by herself is traumatizing. We are there to guide these victims through the hardest thing they've ever done, and that is stand up to somebody who's, in many cases, tried to kill them, and often they're children. We have a large victim base of children who have been abused, who come in through our healthcare legal partnership, and but for the fact that we are located in those in a couple of clinics, they would not even know we existed, as Director Rappaport testified earlier. They know of us because we're there. We also, with the limited number of attorneys that we have in our office, the level of outreach that we've been able to do has really decreased, especially in the metro. Southern Minnesota Regional Legal Services covers 33 counties. Many, the great majority of them are rural counties where the number of attorneys per person drops precipitously. And again, we are left to either give people advice in a pamphlet or to just not be able to represent them at all. When it comes to the impact on migrant families, on minority families, on people of color, and on rural populations, it's a very inequitable system, being unable to fund the number of attorneys that we would need to reach these people. So I'll echo what one of my colleagues said, is that having to turn somebody away is the most painful thing we can have to do. A lot of these cases are very complicated and time consuming, especially when we get into the family law realm. So that involves stamina, and it involves an attorney who can afford to stay through the end of that trial that case that sometimes might last over a year. Something else we've been seeing with the rise in the drugs of methamphetamine and fentanyl is that we have a number of missing parents who are not caring for kids. We have relative caregivers, oftentimes grandparents, who are caring for children without any legal custody label. And so when they get into clinics and hospitals, they can't get treatment. I've had a client call me from a clinic because her 7-year-old granddaughter needed major oral surgery for lack of dental care from her mother. This was the grandmother. They called me from the West St. Paul Children's Hospital Clinic across the river, begging me to talk to a doctor or an administrator there to get this child care. Now, kids can get emergency care by law, but when it comes to that follow-up care, they can't. So a huge increase in the cases that we're getting, and ones that are actually very rewarding, are these third-party custody cases of grandparents caring for kids whose parents have abandoned the children many times because of addiction. And so this is really impacting children and our southern county population and throughout the state, I can guarantee you. And so last of all, we have in the metro, just north of the Capitol here, we have a very large Burmese immigrant refugee population. They make up the Karen community. Our healthcare legal partnership at Bethesda Clinic up on Rice Street helps a large number of these refugees who have come from war in Burma, who have staggering mental health and physical disabilities, who come to the United States, are given green cards, and are able to access Social Security SSI. They get that for 7 years until they become, and then they have to become a citizen. They have no idea how to go about that. So we're able to preserve a public benefit, a federal public benefit for them, by representing them and getting them their citizenship, which is naturalization, which is not the same as representing asylum seekers. These are refugees who have come in from Burma, and we are able to have them naturalized to become citizens so that they can earn benefits that other similarly situated individuals in their neighborhoods can get. So that's another huge need. That the need there is enormous, and a lot of them have so many healthcare needs. They have children who also need to get their citizenship. So that's something that we're able to do. And there's a huge number, and doing a naturalization case is not particularly difficult, but it makes a massive impact. So if we just had more attorneys, even young new attorneys, that's a really nice thing that they can do that makes a huge impact. And it's we just need it's the numbers. So we're having to turn some of them away. We refer a lot of them to Immigrant Law Center, but we can't. There's only so much that they can take as well. So at that, I thank you for inviting us here today to testify, and I'll rest my case. Thank you.
Never take the lawyer out of a lawyer. Huh? Thank you, Ms. Gurdon. Just if I can quickly say, you brought up some great points there. Thank you for highlighting the need in greater Minnesota. I think oftentimes we talk about building up infrastructure, and we think about our roads and our streets and our bridges, but there are some human infrastructure and systems that we need to make sure we invest in to really help Minnesotans. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
I see that we have someone who signed up from the public to testify, Dr. Roger J. Day. Come on down. Doctor, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This is a fabulous opportunity, and it may not look like I'm really happy to be here, but I am. I'm a Minnesotan with a disability. And my disability stems from government abuses. So it's really hard for me to interact with government. It's really hard to come to this room today and ask for your understanding. The governor has a vision for one Minnesota, and so far it has not included me. I am not respected in Minnesota. I am not treated fairly in Minnesota. Have not been for 31 years. I've had a disability for 31 years caused by a procedural assault upon me where I did not get justice. I had a complaint made about me to the university, which was not true. It was supported by a counterfeit document, and that counterfeit document was just weaponized and used to destroy me. And I was told, well, this investigation isn't really a legal proceeding. You'll get legal rights on appeal, was what I was told on January 17th, 1992. So on Friday afternoon, January 17th, 1992, the University of Minnesota did a quasi-judicial assault upon me and directly ruined my life, but also created a problem for Minnesota and the wider world. The world does not know what happened on that date and what's wrong with all of the records since. I've been doing my best to manage the disability that this has caused, and I've now learned to seek out disability accommodations, and it's kind of in a new realm. That my handicap is a procedural handicap, that I get so emotionally affected by legal procedures that I cannot function within them. And so I'm not financially impoverished, and so I don't qualify for legal aid for the financially impoverished. But what I am, I'm socially impoverished and I'm procedurally impoverished. And the Disability Law Center within legal aid can still help me based on my disability rather than on my finances. So I want to highlight that we need more money for the Disability Law Center so that the Disability Law Center can pursue justice where justice is not occurring for lack of disability accommodation.
Dr. Day, I want to thank you for sharing this story. I'm going to see if there's any more public testifiers, and then we want to get to the discussion because we do want to make sure we can get this bill moving so we can get that funding out. I appreciate you coming to share that story. Would you like to take a couple of sentences to wrap up?
My representative offered me this line, given the limited amount of time for public testimony, if any members of this committee are interested in learning more about the particular situation that I describe and how civil legal aid resources are critical to helping Minnesota in this situation, I am very happy to arrange time to meet with you individually to discuss this matter in more detail.
That's a perfect line, and I'd be happy to speak with you more about this.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any more public testifiers that would like to come up before we move on to member discussion? Seeing none, member discussion. Any members? Representative Scott, sorry.
It's okay, Mr. Chair, wrong Peggy.
Yeah.
I wonder if I could ask a question of Ms. Rappaport. Is she still in the room? There she is. Thank you.
Representative Frederick's so tall, you couldn't see her.
Representative Scott.
Thank you. Ms. Rappaport, I've just noticed a really huge difference between the governor's budget and what this bill asks for. And I wonder if you could speak to that. Did you have conversations with the governor's office? And if you know anything about the difference in what's being asked between the bill and the governor's budget, if you could address that.
Ms. Rappaport.
Chair, thank you. Representative Scott, for your question. The amount that we highlighted on the chart, the red fonted numbers, yes, those are the numbers that were part of Civil Legal Services budget request for this biennium and what's been included in the governor's budget. We wanted an opportunity to show this committee, because we've been asked multiple times, what will it take to fully fund civil legal aid? It will take a lot more. And so the numbers that are in blue show you how we could start building capacity now. Our priority has been salary parity. And so the number you see for fiscal year 24 is focused on continuing that salary parity progress. And then the numbers you see for fiscal year 25 actually starts the capacity building. If this bill were to pass, we could start with capacity building now. So we would add that 3.3 million to start with capacity building. So really the numbers you're seeing here, the color differential shows you, here's what at a minimum we need to do this session. And we're really grateful for the bill, which is before you, to help us on a trajectory of fully funding our system. And so the other colors show you, if we were to do that, here's how we need to start now. I hope that helps answer your question.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that does help. And I was astounded at the difference. I've never seen a request, I don't think in my time in the legislature, for a quadruple of what of the current budget. And I do think there needs to be some salary parity for you guys. But this was kind of an astounding number that jumped off the page. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Becker Finn.
Thank you. And as I think this really relates to the conversation we've had around public defenders is nobody had previously been asking them, what would it actually take to do this right? And I think, unfortunately, over the years, folks get coached to just ask for something that you might actually get and don't even dare to talk about what it looks like. And I think the important thing with this presentation today, and I really want to thank our testifiers today, is it really highlights what you can do when you actually fund this properly, because long term it actually saves us resources. It saves court resources, public safety resources, public benefit resources. If those folks aren't seeking out emergency shelter and having to use all those other programs to get support by having an attorney that helps them stay in their home, like that's a better outcome for everybody. So I recognize it's a big number, but I think it's better that we live in reality and talk about what's actually needed. And no disrespect to chairs before me or the governor's office or anyone else who helps come up with these numbers, but I would rather live in reality and talk about what is actually needed. And so that's why the number is bigger.
Representative Scott. Thank you, Chair Becker Finn. Representative Niska. Representative Weems.
Mr. Chair, my question is for Director Rappaport. Director Rappaport, I see you have veteran services on here, very near and dear to my heart. I'm curious, is that a separate division, or can you describe the number of veteran interactions or caseloads that you have? And if there's any special training for your attorneys and assistants that assist veterans?
Ms. Rappaport.
Chair, Representative, thank you so much for the question. We primarily are assisting veterans with housing issues. We have partnerships with other veterans organizations, including the Minnesota Assistance Council for Veterans, that we are able to help veterans before they're facing homelessness. There's a lot of intervention to ensure that the conglomeration of mental health, income, employment, all of these issues are being addressed to help veterans stay in their homes. Now, veterans are receiving services for other types of issues beyond housing. I mean, we've helped them in family law matters, employment law matters, consumer debt matters. We are focused on trying to help veterans have stability and security in their lives. There are some jurisdictions that have veterans courts where they focus more on serving veterans in a holistic fashion. And so we have been involved in specialty courts in civil legal services. We hope to be able to expand what we're able to do for veterans if this bill is passed. So thank you so much for your question.
And Mr. Chair, if I could follow up,
Representative Wayne.
and also Representative Becker-Finn, please interject. I'm always curious about success metrics, and we've heard much about how much we want to increase the budget and the salaries, but those metrics or a report back to this body by which we can see that we are advancing those particular things. So my line of questioning on veterans is I'd like to know how many we're actually seeing and assisting. And thank you for letting me know that MACV and the other nonprofits, as well as possibly the MDVA, is involved in that. I think I'm not certain that it is in here, but I would like to see a report back annually to our body on those objectives that we desire to have, that we are advancing, providing legal services to those that are challenged. So that's kind of my statement, my question, probably for Representative Becker-Finn.
Chair Becker-Finn.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can get that information. I mean, I know they keep really good statistics. I just asked them to keep the presentation pretty focused today so that we would be able to have time for the discussion. So I'm sure we can get that information and share with the committee.
Representative Scott, you have one more question? I'll get
I
to other
do
members.
briefly. Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, for the brevity, or allowing me to ask. To Ms. Rappaport, just sort of maybe a process question, but it might go to the budget as well. When you have two parents that are both at poverty level that would qualify for your services for family law, how do you decide which parent you help?
Ms. Rappaport.
Chair, Representative Scott, thank you for your question. As law firms do, the party that contacts a legal aid program first, if there is no conflict of interest, will determine are they income eligible and do we have the capacity to help them. So say in that circumstance, party A calls first, there's no conflict, we've never assisted party B, we may be providing some level of service for them. If party B then contacts us like a law firm, it would potentially be a conflict of interest. But that is why we have a critical partnership with the private bar so that they're able to take cases pro bono and help where we cannot if there's a conflict on a family law type case.
Chair Becker-Finn.
And I can actually, I clerked in family court, and there's actually a rotating list where there are many, many family law attorneys that volunteer to be on that list. So when we do have a conflict case, that the clerk can even help facilitate calling one of those attorneys to fill in so that you don't have a disparity in one of the parties not having an attorney. So it's pretty common, yeah, with law firms, I think, especially in smaller communities too.
Thank you, Chair. Representative Carroll.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment about Chair Becker-Finn's leadership, and I appreciate your leadership. You just pointed out that you law clerked in family court. I was an attorney there, and you were provided outstanding leadership at that time, and you are today. And I appreciate on this subject as well as the public defenders. And let me compliment Chair Frazier as well. So thank you for your service.
I was feeling left out.
Like a civil guy.
Mr. Chair, I've never had, my whole life as an attorney has been in public interest law, whether it was clerking or at the Hennepin County Attorney's Office or here now, so.
Thank you, Chair Becker-Finn. With no further discussion, Chair Becker-Finn, would you like to close, and then we'll get to a vote?
Yep, just want to highlight how legal aid, and that actually is a great segue into, I also want to highlight, how legal aid does the best that they can by highly utilizing student attorneys. I also was a student attorney. I worked in the disability rights, Social Security benefits area as an intern, as a law student as well. So again, ultimately, this is not only, we heard the personal stories of how this impacts real life, real people, but it also ultimately saves our justice system money and resources by actually investing in this now. So it really is an investment in the future and in the people of our state, and would appreciate member support.
Thank you, Chair. I will renew my motion to refer House File 286 as amended to the Committee on Ways and Means. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
The motion prevails. You're on your way, Chair Becker-Finn.